Kings fans, if you were already excited about Zach LaVine in Sacramento, you will be by the end of this podcast. Big Dave from CHGO Bulls joins me to talk about Zach LaVine, what he's bringing to Sacktown from Chicago, how he can make up for the offense that De'Aaron Fox leaves behind, and LaVine DeRozan, Part 2 in Sacramento. Will it work better than it did in Chicago? It's all right here for you on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News, and I'm glad that the Kings and Bulls keep working together, because that means I get to keep working with my guy, Big Dave from the CHGO Bulls podcast. He does a phenomenal job over there covering Chicago Bulls basketball. We become friends over the years. He's one of the former hosts of the Locked On Bulls podcast. And having Big Dave on the show is always such a treat. Like I said in the intro, I think by the end of this conversation, you'll be very excited about what Zach LaVine is bringing to the Kings. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with the one and only Big Dave. Apparently the Bulls, Spurs, and Kings are the only teams in the NBA willing to work together to actually make a trade, but I'm not complaining, because anytime the Kings and Bulls work together, or even rumored to be working together, that gives me an excuse to have Big Dave on the show. Big Dave from Bowl on Sports. Got to make sure you say it right. Bowl on Sports. That's the first thing Dave taught me when I met him. Also one of the co-hosts of the CHGO Bulls podcast. I had the privilege of being on that pod yesterday. Now I got Dave here on Locked On Kings. Dave, first it was DeMar DeRozan. Now it's Zach LaVine as the Sacramento King. We're just trying to copy and paste the Bulls from the last couple of years and bring it here to Sacramento. Just your initial reaction on seeing DeRozan and LaVine back together, but wearing purple instead of red.
Oh man. I'm happy they're back together. First of all, hello Kongs fan. It's always great to see y'all. I'm happy they're back together. I'm very curious as to what this means going forward for your team, as far as picking the type of lane that they want to be in. Because before, it felt like you guys were definitely trying to be a playoff team. Without a doubt, that's what you were going for. Like, we want to be in the playoffs. We want to make noise. We were the best offense in NBA history last year. Like, we should be in the playoffs making some noise. And now it feels like, okay, are you guys just want to be in the play-in and see what happens? And then from that, make decisions going forward? Or is playoffs still your absolute goal in mind? Because there have been a lot of changes on your team. And, from your coach to De'Aaron Fox, for goodness sakes. So when you get rid of those two kind of pillars, it makes me wonder what kind of house you're building right now. And so, yeah, that's how I'm looking at it. And that's what I see. Because from a Bulls fan's perspective, I know what those two guys got us. And it was definitely a play-in in playoffs one year, but a 6 seed, but play-in this time. So, and that was because Lonzo was the point guard and a really good one. You guys got rid of the really good one that you all have at the point guard position. So I'm curious to see what that looks like.
So the Kings have made it known that continuing to be competitive is the expectation. There's no mention of contendership. And if anybody were to bring up contending for a title right now in Sacramento, I think they'd just be laughed at. Let's be honest with you. Maybe they can get to that point still, but hard to trade your franchise player and then consider yourself still a contender, unless I guess you're the Dallas Mavericks or something. I don't know. Like, thinking about why it will be different. The reality is, like, these guys are older now, right? And they're trying to do it in the West, which, no disrespect to the East, it's harder to do it in the West than it is to do it in the East, at least historically. But Dave, I mean, that Bulls team was talented. I remember because I pick an Eastern Conference team every year. And the year that the Bulls made the playoffs, I picked the Bulls to be my Eastern Conference team that year to follow very, very closely. And I look at that roster and I look at this roster, and I'm trying to talk myself into, no, this roster is overall better and overall different at the top. Like having DeMar DeRozan instead of Vucevic, or Malik Monk is the primary facilitator or ball handler instead of Lonzo Ball, who was really good at the time. That was before all those injuries that knocked him down for so long. Having Keegan Murray out there with them. Like, I'm not going to necessarily ask you to compare that Bulls roster to this current Kings roster, but do you think there's enough reason to believe in Sacramento that this version will be different, or this version will work better because of the pieces around LaVine and DeRozan?
That's a great question. I think I would say yes. And mainly because I'm kind of looking at Sabonis. You still have a guy that, even though you can tell he's kind of at the top of that mountain and starting to walk down it, he's still near that top as far as his prime is concerned. You know what I mean? So we had a guy in Vooch who was on the other side of his prime and also was not comfortable with being the third guy on his team. You can speak to it better than I can, but just from the outside looking in, it doesn't feel like Sabonis has that issue. Nope. It feels like he's okay with however, you guys want to play it. I'm going to get my double-double regardless. I'm going to work around this. And Vooch really struggled with that. It's kind of why he's having his best season that he's had since being a Bull this year, something I predicted before the season started. And he's absolutely been just great for the Bulls. I need him to chill because we're trying to lose. But as far as, like, obviously you can't compare Malik Monk and Lonzo Ball, just two different, skill sets right there. One's a great shooter, the other one's just a great facilitator. But Keegan Murray, and I can't compare Keegan Murray and Patrick Williams because Keegan Murray dwarfs him, and he's just absolutely better. And even in that year, the Bulls had Javonte Green running at their forward because Patrick Williams got hurt. He got hurt. He hurt his wrist, and he was out pretty much the majority of the season. So they still were. Javonte Green was still able to provide them with defense, effort, and with a motor, and it really worked. Like, I don't know how, but it worked with a 6'4" guy at the forward position. It still worked out for the Bulls. So I think you guys are, yes, you have a lot of Bulls about you, but it's a West Coast Bulls about you, and that's a different thing. And I feel like that's a team that can actually fight, and be a little bit better because, again, I'm looking at Sabonis, but I don't know if this means you all get into the actual top six. That I have to see, because Zach LaVine, as much as I love him and as much as everybody in Chicago loves Zach LaVine, if we're just looking at it on paper and what's been proven, he hasn't been a guy to get you to the playoffs. Now, the good thing about this, he's not going to be asked to on this one. He's not going to be asked to be the man. And he probably will be, second or third option on your squad. And some nights, maybe even fourth if Keegan Murray and Malik Monk are cooking. So it'll be interesting to watch how that works and how that dynamic works. Doug Christie, it seems like he's proven himself to be a pretty solid coach, man. And I feel like that he might be able to put Zach and DeMar and the rest of those guys in a better position to win. So just not surrounded by the point guard position like the Bulls were. Like, once that pin was pulled, that team just completely collapsed. I don't see the same thing happening here in Sacramento with you guys. So I'm just very interested to watch and see how that works.
Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by GameTime. If you're looking for tickets to your next big event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, or a sports game, like, I don't know, tickets to see Zach LaVine's debut tomorrow night when the Kings take on the Orlando Magic in the Golden One Center, finding the right ticket at the right price can sometimes be a headache, but with GameTime Picks, it's never been easier. This is how it works. With GameTime Picks, the app does all of the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste your time searching through endless ticket listings. I've been using GameTime picks for a while now for a multitude of different events. I will not go and use any other app. The curated deals make it super simple to find great tickets at a great price. No more sifting through thousands of options. You can get it quickly. I grabbed a super deal for a prime seat on some tickets going to spring training to watch the not Sacramento A's, but the A's play in Arizona. I couldn't believe the value. It was a steal on already very, very good value spring training tickets. The seat view feature is a game changer. Before I even hit buy, I can see exactly where my seat will be and what it will look like in the venue. It's reassuring and it's as accurate as you could possibly get. The best part, you're covered with GameTime's lowest price guarantee. You find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund you 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something happens and something comes up. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. That's what's interesting about this entire thing is I don't think there is a clear number one. And I think probably long-term that's a problem, but short-term, maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be, at least for the remainder of the season. I think a lot of people naturally are going to look at LaVine and go, you're replacing Fox. You're the new number one, especially with the points per game that he's been averaging and the offense that he's been bringing. But some nights it might be DeRozan. We saw DeRozan with 33 last night to bring the Kings to a win over the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think Malik Monk is going to have just higher usage and higher volume numbers naturally with the ball in his hands more. Sabonis might have to be the guy more often as now kind of pretty much the longest tenured star here in Sacramento. But what I wanted to ask you, Dave, is I mean, Fox and LaVine are different players, but a lot of fans in Sacramento are looking at LaVine's numbers and looking at Fox's numbers and going, okay, LaVine only averages 1 point less per game. His offensive numbers are far more efficient than De'Aaron, at least shooting the basketball, right? Shooting from the field and especially shooting from 3-point range. Mm-hmm. Is it fair to expect, or do you think it's right to expect Zach LaVine to replace, I won't say all, but a majority of the offense that Fox is leaving behind? And is there a way where the Kings offense that was already a couple of years ago one of the best in history, is there a way that it can be taken even to another level with Zach because of his efficiency?
That second part, I would say, I don't know about another level, but a different one. You can't, because it'll be a different style of play. Like De'Aaron Fox is De'Aaron Fox, and he's not going to be like a Zach LaVine type. As you mentioned, the numbers are concerned. Like he's not going to be as efficient, but he's just as dangerous. And he's just as much of a problem, if not a bigger one for a lot of teams than Zach LaVine. And, I love De'Aaron Fox. I loved him since he was at Kentucky when he was busting Lonzo Ball's ass. Like, I've loved De'Aaron Fox, and all my friends can tell you this. Like that is my guy. And he's a guy I trust in that fourth quarter. What I will say is you guys got Zach at the right time, because you're getting the best version of Zach LaVine that we've seen in Chicago ever. He has never been this. He has never been this smoother. He has never been this more IQ-oriented of a basketball player than he has been this season. Everything he's done correctly. There's nothing he forced. There's nothing he just said, oh, man, I got to go do this. That was always the Zach we knew, was the Zach who would dribble it off his foot because it's the fourth quarter and he's trying to make something happen. The Zach who couldn't handle the basketball and would turn it over as soon as the double team came. We have not seen any of that this season. He's letting the game come to him. What he did here, Matt, is the second quarter would come with about 5 minutes to go. That was always his time. He would start taking over the game. And then the third quarter was always his quarter. He would just take over the whole third quarter. And then the fourth quarter, he would kind of play it by ear, seeing what they need from me. Do I need to close this out? He had very close several times to getting a triple-double. He's never had one. He came very close several times to getting one this season, more than any other season that he has had. And I'm talking about a 14, 9, and 10 kind of triple-double, not like a 30-point one. You know what I mean? Like, oh, man, you know what? I'm going to just be efficient tonight. I'm going to just get everybody involved. I'm going to just do this. They don't need me to be that scorer. He's reading the game so much better. So I think you all are getting him at a perfect time. And I can't wait to see what that means for your team. Also, when we were here in Chicago with DeMar, there was always talk, I would say, among Bulls Nation about, can they get along? Can DeMar and Zach get along? Can they play together? Obviously they can, but do they really like each other? Like, are they cool with each other? DeMar wants the ball in the fourth quarter. He demands it. He's got to have it. Is Zach okay with him being that guy? I don't think you guys are going to have any of those issues at all. I feel like that's going to be worked out just by the way Zach has been playing. He has shown himself to be completely unselfish and a guy who just wants to win and wants what's best for y'all. So I can say you're getting a better Zach LaVine. I don't know if it takes you to another level, but it definitely takes you to a different one. Now, as far as the scoring, I think you should expect it. I have no problem with fans expecting Zach LaVine to at least kind of replace what De'Aaron Fox was bringing, because Zach LaVine is an offensive threat. It's what he does. He scores. Like, that's what he does. The three-point shooting is water. You know what I mean? The mid-range is ridiculous. For me, he still has a top 5 quickest first step in the NBA. That's what I always thought was amazing about Zach. His first step is elite. Like, teams can't guard him. Like, he is very, very hard to guard. So I think it's not, fool's gold or just wishing or pie in the sky wish to think that he can replace the scoring output of a guy like De'Aaron Fox, because that's what he does best, is put the ball into the bucket.
Well, let me put you on the spot a little bit, Dave, because you have obviously been breaking this trade down from the Bulls' perspective. Put yourself in the Sacramento perspective. Now that we know the details of the trade, would you have made it? Trading De'Aaron Fox to the San Antonio Spurs, which seems kind of inevitable based off the entire situation, and Zach LaVine is the biggest piece that you're getting back in the deal. They got draft picks too, but none of them are all that exciting. But would you have made this deal if you were from the Sacramento perspective?
From the Sacramento perspective. So I think it was kind of had to, because it feels like Rich Paul and them made their minds up for you guys.
Yeah, he did that.
No, you better trade him now, because we're not coming back. So
yeah.
Oh yeah, by the way, he want to go here. So you might as well go ahead and do this, because we're not going to take any other offers. So you guys are kind of put in a corner on this one. And I guess you got back what you thought was best that you could get back. Now, I know talking to you, you're not happy with the return at all, or you should feel like it should be more.
I'm happy with Zach. I'm really happy with Zach. I just wanted the Spurs to give something up, damn it.
I hear you, man, dude. San Antonio, they always happy. They get what they want. Like, and it's so wild. But yeah, like, I think you would have no choice but to make this trade. Like, once Mike Brown went, it feels like that was kind of inevitable right there. And De'Aaron Fox made that kind of clear, not by him saying anything, just by like, no, man, like the clips that start coming about him and Mike Brown and how close they were, and they went to dinner. Like them dudes were tight. And then you get rid of him in a season where you're trying to be a playoff team like that. That's confusing to a guy like De'Aaron Fox, I'm sure, who is like, well, why would you get rid of the coach that is taking us there? That makes no sense. So from that instance, I think the writing was on the wall and you kind of had to make the trade. As far as the return, again, I think you know that better than me. All I saw was all the picks that you all got that we are envious of here in Chicago, because we're like, hey, man, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get picks. We need all of them. We had to make a trade to get our pick back, like well, you know what I'm saying? Like, we had to take back one we already traded, and guess who we traded it for? DeMar DeRozan. Where's DeMar DeRozan? In Sacramento. Like, everything is just connecting. It's so wild. It's so crazy. And I think you all had to make it, though. And I think I would. I think I would make that trade to trade De'Aaron Fox. It would hurt my soul. I probably would cry a little bit because I love De'Aaron Fox, man. And I probably would shed just a single tear and, have a shot of whiskey or something. But I think I will pull the trigger on it.
Well, going back to LaVine, one of the negatives about LaVine that a lot of people talk about is the money that he's making. But hey, man, get your bread. You signed your deal. It is what it is. Nothing you can really do about that. Good for Zach, and he's staying for another 2 years because there's no way he's not accepting that player option at the end. That's $49 million. So that's just reality. But a lot of people talk about Zach's health. And I mean, I know he's dealt with a couple catastrophic injuries. Just last season, only played 25 games. But I mean, he's played 3 fewer games this season than De'Aaron Fox. And you go through and you look at the games played, and there are seasons where he's in the 70s, the high 60s. Yeah. Do people make too big of a deal about Zach's health because he's dealt with some big injuries? But because it seems like those big injuries aside, for the most part, he plays at the same volume as most of the top players in the NBA.
Yeah, it's definitely overblown, without a doubt. Yeah, he came in. When we traded for him from Minnesota, he came in with that knee injury that he had to rehab and get right. But Zach has been dealing with injuries a lot throughout his tenure, but it hasn't stopped him from being a 2-time All-Star. And this year, he's the healthiest we've ever seen him, and you see the results that you're getting. And you know, a lot of those injuries, I think, also were because a lot of things were being forced. He was trying way too hard to do a lot of stuff that he just simply could not do. But it was because nobody else was on the team to help him do those things that he was trying to do. So, yes, and last year was just a wild year because he made it clear he wanted to be traded. And then he took the surgery and went ahead. I'm sitting out for the rest of the season, in my opinion. That's how I kind of took that. Now, yeah, you get yourself healed up and ready for the season. But, guys, since we can't make this trade, you know what? I'm gonna get this surgery. Why sit here hurting if it's not gonna happen for me? Let me go ahead and get this injury so I can be back better next year. And you see the result of what he is this year. He's in that again, absolutely phenomenal this season, man. Like the most of the games that he missed was because he just had his 3rd child, so he's been out dealing with that, man. So it hasn't really been a lot of injuries, just maybe nicks and bruises or something like that. But Zach will play through anything. That's the other thing you guys will come to discover about him is that is a tough dude. And I don't know why he never got the same kind of love for that like a Jimmy Butler got, but Zach definitely played through anything. There were many times I sat in that hallway of the UC with Matt, and Matt can tell you this too, where we saw this dude come limping down the runway. He wasn't playing that night, but he came limping down, like visibly limping and hurt. And he's like, "Hey, what's up, guys?" And we're like, "Why are you here? Like shouldn't you be at home? Go home, Zach." No, he didn't want to go home. He wanted to be there for his team. He wanted to sit there and be there for his squad. That's the kind of person you're getting in a Zach LaVine, man. So if he's injured, he won't play, but he'll play through anything, man, because that dude just wants to win. He really does.
Locked On Kings is also brought to you by BetterHelp. What are some of your relationship's green flags? We often hear about the red flags that we should avoid, but what if we focus more on the positive signs and identifying those positive signs in our relationships? Those are the green flags. If you're not sure what they look like, therapy can help you identify them and actively practice them and even embody those green flags yourself, whether it's a relationship you're dating, you're married, you're building a friendship, or you're just working on yourself. Therapy can help form relationships that love you back. Therapy helps you develop healthy boundaries and improves your communication skills. It empowers you to set clear expectations and express your needs in relationships. Therapy also provides tools for managing conflict in ways that strengthen your connections rather than break them down. BetterHelp makes it easy by offering online therapy with over 30,000 licensed therapists to choose from. And if you need to switch therapists, you can do so at no extra cost. Discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. A lot of people make a lot of noise about LaVine's defense too. Now, I don't know if you've seen the history books in Sacramento, but defense has been trash here for a long time. So I don't know how much worse Zach LaVine could possibly make it. And to me, like there's 2 levels of bad defense, Dave. There's like, oh, you look at the numbers and you're like, oh, he's not a good defender according to the numbers. And then there's, I'm watching you play defense and you're like you're a revolving door. You don't do anything. What level does Zach LaVine fall at? Is he the kind of bad defender that just statistically is going to show up and you're going to be like, oh, bummer? Like half of this Kings roster? Or is he the kind of bad defender where we're going to be watching a close game in the Golden One Center and he's going to get cooked and we're going to all be hyper focusing on it?
That's a great question. I would say he's a better defender than DeMar. So there's your bar right there.
Okay.
Now DeMar is not an excellent defender. Like, it's not what he does.
Right.
But I think he's been playing it better this year than I've seen him. He's not been bad with the team. Zach has been better with his defense. Nobody has been calling him out, yelling about it here in Chicago as we were previously talking about it. Because he worked on it. He truly worked on it in off seasons. Like, I know for a fact that one season he was working with Kendall Gill, who was showing him certain moves and certain things he needed to do to get better, to the point where Kendall Gill was pointing it out to us on the screen, exactly what he was showing Zach was doing. He was like, see, he's doing what I taught him. See, he's supposed to lead with the left hand and go right here so get the steal. He did exactly what I showed him. So that's just to say that he understood his flaws and he tried his best to conquer them and, do better every single year, to the point where his defense right now is just not something we mentioned or even really truly discussed here in Chicago. We were like, whatever he did on the defensive end, whatever mistake, we knew he was going to make up for it on the offensive end. Will he get cooked one-on-one? That's a great question, because y'all are in the West and y'all got some amazing one-on-one guys. So yeah, I don't know if it would be shortchanging the greatness of the players he'll be going one-on-one against. But yeah, I expect Zach to lose a one-on-one battle. I expect him to be even though on a bunch of them. Like he's smarter and he's a little bit better, but I expect him to be even on a few of them when he goes up. But yeah, that ain't saying he ain't gonna be cooked up, filleted, and put to the side by several great one-on-one guys. But I just don't think it will be as bad as we have seen in the past. I feel like he has definitely improved his defense, and I don't think Doug Christie will put him in a tough position either.
Well, look, even the best defenders get cooked every once in a while on one-on-one with how amazingly talented the offensive players are in this league. And the good news is here in Sacramento, it's going to be Keegan Murray, unless Keegan's hurt, knock on wood. It's going to be Keegan Murray that's going to be taking that matchup, so Zach can hopefully get a little bit of a break off that, because DeMar doesn't have to face and guard the best of the best too often on a nightly basis here in Sacramento. Hopefully Zach can be the same way. Well, Dave, kind of one of the pretty much the last thing for you. Sure. Wednesday, tomorrow night, Kings, Magic in Sacramento, their first game back after a 6-game road trip that's been like the road trip from hell. And LaVine is expected to make his debut.
Okay.
And the Golden One Center, I mean, it gets rowdy. It gets loud. We've seen the highlights of what Zach can do. Of course, you go back and watch his incredible dunk contest performances. How much buzz or anticipation should there be if a fan is going to the Golden One Center to watch Zach LaVine play in person over the next couple of years? How much buzz or anticipation should a fan have for, oh, Zach's going to do something exciting for us tonight? Like how much of a showman is Zach in addition to just a damn good basketball player?
Yeah, that's a great way to say that. A showman, but also a competitor, a ridiculous competitor. So you can expect Zach LaVine to do what he's been doing this year. There's no other reason to accept it any otherwise. I would say maybe he has to get acclimated more to, your offense, to the court, to the fan, like all of that plays in. But at the end of the day, when the ball is, on the floor and it's time to play, I'm sure he's professional enough to forget all that and just hoop. And I don't expect him. I would say I don't expect him to be like 28, 32 points or anything like that. I want him to be that, absolutely. But just for stuff getting acclimated and getting cool, I think maybe like 15, maybe 18, even 20 would be great for a guy like Zach LaVine. But I'm hoping for the best, man, because also you all are getting what I feel is a top 3 catch and shoot shooter in the NBA. And the numbers show you that. Like numbers, he was number 1 as far as catch and shoot is concerned. And if you all can get that going along with Malik Monk with his shooting abilities, man, listen, you can be extra scary and formidable out there in the West for sure. So have fun with Zach, appreciate him, love him. He will die on the court for your team, man. He really will. And I'm excited for him. And I wish him just all the best in the world, man. I really do. He's gonna be great. He's gonna be great for y'all.
Well, Big Dave, I'm sure you fired up a lot of Kings fans listening to this podcast who are already excited about Zach LaVine. And listeners, if you ever have any interest in what's going on in Chicago with the Bulls, the CHGO Bulls podcast is an absolute must. Hey, maybe we'll check in every once in a while and see how Kevin Huerter's doing over there with the Bulls. But whatever happens in Chicago, Big Dave has got it covered over there with Matt. So I really appreciate you, my man. It's always such a pleasure. I look forward to chatting with you every time. It's some of the most fun I have in podcasting is being able to chat with you. Also, Dave told me before this drops, for all my wrestler nerds out there, there's a CHGO wrestling podcast. I had no idea about it. Dave hosts it. I'm about to go check that out like right now. I got to wrap this interview up, so I got to listen to it. So I'm excited about that too. But Dave, you're my man. I appreciate you so much, brother, and I hope we can do it very, very soon.
Well, Matt, you are a visionary. You are a revolutionary. You are Matt freaking George. Shout out to you, friend.
I appreciate that. It's a Seth Rollins reference in case anybody doesn't get that. I don't dress quite like Seth Rollins, but maybe I could pull off an accent too.
Maybe.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.